All right, so are you ready for a real challenge today?
Oh, I think I am.
It's tracing the evolution of England's economic systems and trade, from prehistory to the modern era.
Okay.
And wow, you guys really did not make this easy on us.
It's an interesting mix of sources for sure.
I mean, we've got everything. Historical texts, government reports.
Oh, yeah. Even a Billboard Hot 100 list.
Yeah, I mean, wow. So today we're going to be tracing the evolution of England's economic landscape, like all the way from prehistoric times to the modern era, unearthing some surprising connections along the way.
Right.
I'm kind of picturing England's economic history like a river.
Okay.
This starts as like a little stream.
Right.
And then it gathers momentum, and it carves out its path over time, shaping the landscape.
Makes sense.
So where does this river begin?
Well, our journey starts back in the Neolithic period, around 4000 BC.
Wow.
This is when England transitioned from hunting and gathering to farming and settled life.
Okay, so this was even before the concept of money as we know it, right?
That's right.
So, I mean, how did this shift to farming change the economic structure of England?
Oh, imagine the impact.
Yeah.
A more reliable food source meant people could stay put.
So instead of everyone having to focus on just finding food,
Exactly.
they could start to specialize.
Right.
And maybe exchange goods and services with each other.
Precisely. And we actually have archaeological evidence to back this up.
Really?
Yeah, the Sweet Track, one of the world's oldest timber trackways, dates back to this period.
Oh, wow.
It suggests a level of coordinated effort and resource management that kind of hints at a more complex economic structure.
I've heard about the Sweet Track, but I never really thought about it in terms of its economic implications.
Yeah.
It's amazing to think of it as a sign of early trade routes.
Right.
And infrastructure development.
Uh-huh.
Is there anything else from this period that points to this, developing economic system?
Well, there's evidence of salt production in North Yorkshire during this time. Now, salt might seem like a simple commodity, but it was essential for food preservation.
Right.
This kind of suggests early specialization. Some communities focused on producing salt,
Right.
trading it with others for food or other necessities.
So already in the Neolithic, we see the seeds of trade and economic interdependence being sown.
Exactly. Fast forward a few millennia, we arrive at the Norman Conquest of 1066.
Okay.
This wasn't simply a change in rulers. It was a complete economic and social earthquake that really reshaped England.
Yeah. I've always been fascinated by the Domesday Book.
Ah.
The one that was commissioned by William the Conqueror?
Of course.
After the conquest.
Right.
It's an incredible snapshot of life in England at the time.
It is.
But is that all it is? Just like a census?
No, it goes far beyond that.
Oh, okay.
It meticulously documented land ownership, resources, and even the value of various assets across England.
Oh, wow.
It was essentially an economic survey designed to help William consolidate his power and maximize tax revenue.
I remember reading that the Domesday Book actually showed that the English ruling class was almost entirely replaced by Normans within just 20 years of the conquest.
Yeah.
That's pretty dramatic.
It is. It's a prime example of how political upheavals can have lasting economic consequences.
So we've got these early foundations laid. But England's still a long way from the global economic powerhouse that it will become, right?
Right.
So what happens next?
Our river begins to gather momentum as we move into the Tudor dynasty.
Okay.
Starting in 1485. This is where we see England transitioning from a medieval kingdom to an early modern state, and the seeds of its future economic dominance are sown.
And I guess this is also where Henry VIII's break with the Roman Catholic Church comes in, right?
Of course.
Establishing the Church of England was obviously a huge political move, but I've always wondered about the economic consequences.
Right.
Did it disrupt existing trade relationships?
It's something historians still debate. Some argue that the break with Rome actually stimulated English trade by freeing it from the control of the Catholic Church.
Okay.
Others point to the religious turmoil and conflicts that followed, which undoubtedly had a destabilizing effect on the economy.
So a mixed bag then.
Right.
But I guess any major shift is going to have both winners and losers economically.
Exactly. But let's not overlook the cultural shifts that were happening during this time, particularly during the Elizabethan era.
Okay.
The Renaissance was spreading to England, bringing new ideas and artistic flourishing, and a growing sense of national identity.
I mean, I can see how that would tie into economic development.
Yeah.
A confident, outward-looking nation is probably more likely to engage in trade and exploration.
Precisely. And we see that play out during the Elizabethan era.
Okay.
Think about the voyages of explorers like Sir Francis Drake and Walter Raleigh, the establishment of colonies in North America, and the flourishing of trade with the East Indies.
So this is where we really see England starting to kind of flex its muscles on the world stage.
Yes.
Both politically and economically.
Yes. And it's also a period where we see a fascinating interplay between economic and cultural forces. The influx of Italian courtiers and artists during the Renaissance wasn't just a cultural phenomenon.
Okay.
It brought new ideas about banking, finance, and trade
Interesting.
that would influence England's economic development.
So it seems like everything is starting to align for England to become a major player in global trade.
Right.
But I know there are still some major turning points ahead,
Yes,
especially in the 17th century.
you're right.
So I guess we'll have to wait till next time to explore those.
Indeed. We've followed England's economic river from its humble beginnings
Yeah.
to this point of burgeoning expansion. But the journey is far from over. The 17th century will bring about dramatic changes, shaping England's destiny in ways no one could have predicted.
Well, I think that's a perfect place to stop for. We've covered a lot of ground.
Yes, we have.
From prehistoric salt production to the voyages of Elizabethan explorers. But the story of England's economic rise is just getting started.
It is. Join us next time as we navigate the rapids of the 17th century and beyond, uncovering the forces that propelled England towards becoming a global economic powerhouse.
Sounds good. I'm looking forward to it. Okay, so welcome back to our deep dive into England's economic saga.
Yes.
Last time we kind of left off with England on the cusp of global expansion, a nation just brimming with confidence and ambition. But I know the path to economic dominance is rarely smooth sailing.
You're right about that. The 17th century brought its share of turbulence, both politically and economically.
Okay.
But it also laid the groundwork for England's emergence as like a global power.
Okay, so let's navigate these rapids.
Yeah.
What were some of the key events that shaped England's economic trajectory? I mean, during this really pivotal century.
Well, one event that really stands out is the Union of the Crowns in 1603.
Oh, yeah.
James VI of Scotland became James I of England, uniting the two kingdoms under a single monarch.
I can imagine that had some pretty big economic implications.
It did. While they remained separate politically, the Union opened up new trade routes and markets within the British Isles.
So, like, the free flow of goods and people between England and Scotland increased?
Exactly,
Yeah.
leading to economic growth in both regions.
Okay.
And it paved the way for further expansion, particularly across the Atlantic.
Ah, so this is where the story of English colonialism in North America begins, right?
It is.
With the establishment of Jamestown in 1607.
Yes. Jamestown marked the beginning of England's colonial venture in North America, a venture driven by a complex mix of, economic opportunity and religious freedom, and the desire for land.
Yeah, it's easy to look back and judge the motivations of those early colonists, like through a modern lens.
Right.
But what were the prevailing economic theories of the time?
Well, mercantilism was gaining traction during this period. The idea that a nation's wealth is measured by its accumulation of gold and silver. Colonies were seen as a source of raw materials, and markets for finished goods, all contributing to the mother country's economic dominance.
So England saw the colonies as a way to kind of increase its wealth and power on the world stage.
Yes, very much so.
But what about the people who actually, made the journey across the Atlantic? What were their economic hopes and dreams?
Well, for many, it was a chance for a fresh start, a chance to escape poverty or religious persecution. Land ownership, which was largely out of reach in England, was a major draw. Others saw opportunities for trade and entrepreneurship, in this new world.
Yeah, it's interesting to consider the human side of this massive economic shift.
Yeah.
It wasn't just about abstract theories
Right.
or national ambition.
Right.
It was about real people seeking a better life.
You're right. And it's important to remember that the colonial economy wasn't just about wealthy merchants and plantation owners. Indentured servitude played a significant role, with many people essentially working off their passage to America in exchange for years of labor.
Right. So it wasn't just about, exploration and exploitation.
No.
It was also about the movement of people and the creation of new societies, however flawed they may have been.
Exactly. The 17th century was a time of profound change, setting in motion forces that would reshape the world.
So as we move into the 18th and 19th centuries, England's economic river continues to kind of broaden and deepen, but it also encounters new challenges, right?
Oh, of course.
What are some of the key developments we see in this next phase of England's economic journey?
Well, one major development is the Industrial Revolution,
Okay.
which began in the late 18th century and transformed England from an agrarian society to an industrial powerhouse.
Wow.
New technologies, like the steam engine and the power loom, dramatically increased production and efficiency.
Yeah, this must have been a period of incredible innovation and change, but also one with significant social and economic consequences.
Absolutely. The Industrial Revolution created vast wealth and opportunities.
Right.
But it also led to widespread urbanization, social upheaval, and the rise of a new working class.
So did that lead to problems with the existing systems of governance?
Yes. The existing systems like parish councils and sanitary districts relied heavily on volunteers and lacked the structure and authority to address the growing needs of these industrial towns and cities.
So is that the impetus for the 1888 Local Government Act?
It was. The 1888 Act was a landmark piece of legislation that standardized local government across England, creating county councils and empowering them to manage essential services like sanitation, public health, and infrastructure.
It seems like a logical progression. As the economy becomes more complex
Right.
and interconnected,
Yeah.
the systems of governance need to adapt as well. But I know the Industrial Revolution wasn't just about domestic changes, right? It also had a big impact on England's role globally.
Absolutely. The Industrial Revolution allowed England to produce goods on an unprecedented scale.
Wow.
And at lower costs, fueling its dominance in global trade. It also spurred further colonial expansion as England sought raw materials and new markets for its manufactured goods.
So the river is flowing even stronger now, carrying English goods and influence to all corners of the globe.
It is.
But I imagine this period also brought new challenges and complexities.
Indeed. Competition from other industrializing nations increased.
Right.
And the social and economic consequences of industrialization, such as poverty and inequality, became increasingly apparent. The 19th century was a time of immense progress, but also growing pains, as England grappled with the complexities of its newfound economic power.
It feels like we're reaching a critical turning point here. England is a dominant force on the world stage, but the landscape is shifting, and new challenges are emerging. So where do we go from here?
That's a great question. It leads us into the 20th century,
Oh.
a period marked by global conflict, economic upheaval, and a fundamental reordering of the world.
Wow.
England's economic river will face its greatest test yet as it navigates the turbulent waters of the 20th century and beyond.
I can't wait to explore that next chapter.
Yeah.
We've traced England's economic journey from its prehistoric roots to the dawn of the 20th century,
Right.
witnessing its transformation from a small island nation to a global powerhouse.
Yeah.
But the story is far from over.
You're absolutely right. Join us in Part 3 as we delve into the 20th century and beyond, uncovering how England navigated the world wars, the rise of the welfare state, and the challenges of globalization. It's a fascinating journey that reveals much about the resilience, adaptability, and enduring spirit of this island nation.
Welcome back to our deep dive. We've traced England's economic journey from its prehistoric beginnings all the way to the 20th century.
Yeah. And as we enter the 20th century, things get really interesting.
I can only imagine. It was such a tumultuous time globally. I mean,
Wow.
2 world wars, major technological advancements. How did all of that impact England's economy specifically?
Well, the world wars were definitely cataclysmic events. They had a profound impact on England, both socially and economically.
Yeah, I mean, the immediate effects must have been devastating.
They were. Think about the mobilization of resources for the war effort, the disruption of trade routes, the loss of human life. All of that had a significant impact.
It must have been a period of immense sacrifice for the British people.
It was. But amidst the hardship and loss, there were also remarkable displays of resilience and innovation. The need to support the war effort actually spurred advancements in technology and manufacturing.
Oh, interesting. So what kind of advancements?
Well, for example, the development of radar
Mm.
and the mass production of aircraft.
Oh, wow.
Those had lasting implications for both military and civilian industry.
So even in the midst of conflict, there were seeds of technological progress that would shape the future.
Exactly.
But what about after the wars? I mean, how did England rebuild and adapt to a world that had changed so much?
Well, that's where we see the emergence of the welfare state.
Mhm.
The idea that the government had a responsibility to provide a safety net for its citizens gained widespread support. Programs for healthcare, education, and social security were expanded, aiming to create a more equitable and just society.
So was this a direct response to the hardships of war, or was it more a reflection of, like, evolving social values?
It was probably a bit of both. The war had highlighted the importance of social solidarity and the need to support those who had sacrificed so much. But at the same time, new economic theories, like Keynesian economics, emphasized the role of government in managing the economy and promoting full employment.
So England was grappling with not just the practicalities of rebuilding, but also with, like, fundamental questions about the role of government and the nature of a just society.
Exactly. And those debates continue to shape economic policies today.
They do. So as we move into the latter half of the 20th century, did new challenges emerge?
Oh, they always do.
I mean, the decline of the British Empire,
Yeah.
globalization, the rise of new economic powers.
Right. All of those things forced England to reassess its place in the world.
It's like that river analogy we used earlier is becoming even more relevant. England's economic river is encountering new currents and tributaries.
It is. And as we enter the 21st century, that complexity just intensifies. Technological advancements, particularly in computing and communications, accelerated the pace of change. And globalization deepened.
Right, creating new opportunities, but also new challenges. And this is where that Billboard Hot 100 list comes into play, right?
It does. Popular culture often reflects the underlying economic currents of a society. And that mention of emerging technology podcasts on the list points to a key area of focus in modern England. Just as shipbuilding and manufacturing were vital in previous centuries, technology and innovation are driving the economy today.
It's like a digital version of those early voyages of exploration and trade.
You could say that. And speaking of new frontiers, we can't ignore the rise of digital currencies.
Right.
And the potential for them to kind of reshape financial systems. It's a development that has huge implications for the future of trade and commerce.
It seems like England has a real knack for adapting and reinventing itself in response to new challenges and opportunities.
That's a great observation. England's economic journey is a testament to its resilience, its capacity for innovation, and its willingness to kind of embrace change.
So as we kind of stand at the confluence of the past and the future, what can we learn from all of this?
Well, one key lesson is adaptability.
Okay.
England's economic success has always been tied to its ability to evolve and respond to changing circumstances.
Right.
From the shift to agriculture in the Neolithic to the embrace of digital technologies today, England has shown a really remarkable capacity for transformation.
I think another lesson is the interconnectedness of everything. Economic, social, and political forces.
Oh.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, we've seen how decisions in one realm can have ripple effects across others, from Henry VIII's break with Rome to the emergence of the welfare state.
It's true. And finally, I think England's economic journey reminds us that human ingenuity is powerful and that it's important to invest in education, innovation, and infrastructure. These are the foundations upon which a strong and resilient economy is built.
It's been an incredible journey, tracing England's economic river, from its humble beginnings to its current position as a global leader in innovation and trade. So what's the next chapter? What will England's economic river look like as it flows into the future? Well, that's a question for all of us to ponder, but one thing is certain: England's history of resilience and innovation suggests that it's well equipped to navigate the currents of change and shape a future that is both prosperous and sustainable. Thanks for joining us on this incredible deep dive into England's economic journey through time.